Hi there. Welcome to Game Days, a webinar where we go over our Game Day as a Service feature. I'm Sydney Lesser, Product Marketing Manager at Gremlin. Today we'll be looking at my favorite aspect in reliability engineering, Game Days. You'll also hear from Andre Newman, Gremlin's Technical Marketing Manager, who will walk you through using our Game Day as a Service feature. We have a full web page dedicated to Game Days at gremlin.com/gameday, singular. So check that out for more resources, including a blog post on how we do internal game days here at Gremlin and a technical demo video. Our agenda today will be talking about the history of Game Day, a typical game day, the feedbacks and findings we found from those typical game days, and then turning that into Game Day as a Service tool. Then Andre will walk you through a great demo so you can really get your hands dirty in it. The history of Game Day. So it was actually coined by Jesse Robbins when he worked at Amazon and was responsible for the availability of all Amazon branded web properties. Jesse created Game Days with the goal of increasing reliability by purposefully creating major failures on a regular basis. They provide an opportunity to practice a potentially dangerous scenario in a safer environment. So what is a game day, you ask? Well, it's a period of time, usually 2 to 4 hours, set aside for a team to run one or more chaos experiments on a system or service, observe the impact they have, then discuss the technical outcomes. A typical game day involves a team of engineers who develop and or support an application, with each team member assigned one of four roles: owner, coordinator, reporter, or observer. Don't worry if you're not familiar with those roles right now. Andre will go over them in the product demo. So why do we have game days? Well, Gremlin believes that the spirit of a game day is to challenge assumptions that give or distributed systems through concrete discussions and thoughtful experimentation. Game days are not just for larger organizations or for dedicated SRE teams. Every team holds assumption about a system's behavior, and game days are a useful tool for testing the assumptions you're aware of and the ones you took for granted. Assumptions aren't bad at all. Most of the time, they help us reason through our daily tasks without getting bogged down by systems complexity. But sometimes making the wrong assumption can blind us to problems that rear their ugly head at a 3 a.m. outage. And if you have ever experienced a 3 a.m. outage call, you know how stressful that is. Ultimately, game days will prevent downtime or hindering issues on your service. This could mean your system handling traffic after that awesome Super Bowl commercial you spent a full year planning and executing, preventing a banking outage, or an airline incident like delayed flights due to a system being down. And at the end of the day, this is going to save you time and money and your problems. So what does a typical game day experience look like? Well, we start with the game day prep. So historically, it can take 2 hours to prep for a game day. Preparation includes selecting a goal and target to test. This is also a great time to hypothesize what might happen if you inject failure. Then once the goals are established, a list of scenarios or attacks to be tested should be created, and those should be executed on to make sure there's no blockers on game day. However, this can actually produce some errors, such as if an attack fails to run, then you have to debug it, which can be difficult. And if you already have a game day scheduled and are doing this at the day before, it can actually postpone due to a triage agent installation or attack errors issued. During this time, you'll also define how to record and track the game day and select which applications and technology stacks you want to use and confirm monitoring and observability dashboards are running. Will it be an Excel document, notes? Does it align with past game day protocol? Do you have a past game day protocol in place? You're gonna have to find this information out on whatever system you use within your team to store the information. Then you have the game day execution, which can take up to 4 hours normally. So once everything has been ironed out smoothly in the preparation, the game day begins. Attendees gather in a room, either physically or over chat. Here at Gremlin, we are remote, so everything's over chat, and we execute a game day. So you're recording notes both from observation during the attacks and the postmortem, using a variety of tools, and then share it. After the results are discussed, then tickets can be created to solve the incidents. The post game, after the game day, should take place about a day after the game day so that the process is fresh in everyone's mind. So as you can see, this is pretty time consuming. We noticed quite a few limitations when we thought about this. We then went to speaking with our customers, getting survey feedback, reviewing customer requests in our product board, which if you are a customer, our product board is an open tool for users to make suggestions and vote on changes. So please utilize that. If you are a customer, it's open for everyone to view, like I said. We love to be transparent here at Gremlin. We looked at our own game days and we saw quite a few shortcomings. People didn't know what or how to test, especially those new to chaos engineering or new on the team. People struggled with scheduling and prioritizing game days. Game days are recorded outside of Gremlin, the app you're already using to test other chaos engineering experiments. So things were just getting lost in the chaos. Game days were taking too long, requiring too much prep and post work, and requiring too many people. Things such as reporting follow-up tickets were getting lost in the shuffle and their outcomes could remain unknown. Were they solved? Did that mean we couldn't start another game day until they were solved? Further, it's hard to compile this information with stakeholders and share its value. Creating a presentation adds on another consuming time layer to your already jam-packed schedule. So out of this came Game Days as a service. Game Days were essentially created with the goal of increasing reliability by purposefully creating major failures on a regular basis. The key is regular. They facilitate all of our chaos engineering practices. However, because they take up so many resources, it's hard to get them on that regular basis. Not to mention the difficulties in lining up schedules for people to focus solely on one event. It can be just difficult to justify this time and money to stakeholders who aren't in the weeds of resiliency. We recognize this problem and built a dedicated tool to lighten the load, to make game days quicker and easier to run, and ultimately to make your platform more reliable and against failure. So what does game day look like now? Well, we've shortened pre-games to start. Pre-games for your game day shouldn't be as time consuming as game days themselves. Reduce the prep time by at least 1.5 hours. Most people find they can pre-game in less than 30 minutes by expanding our pre-game function. Gremlin will automatically validate an agent's health after installation, ensuring attacks will run smoothly during game day. You also create scenarios that you want to test on game day and smoke test them. Any errors can be resolved during a pregame instead of eating into valuable game day time. In preparation for game day, you'll also select your target and goal. Once those are established, you can decide what members should be at the game day. When thinking about who to invite to game day, keep in mind here at Gremlin, we open our game days to the whole company. Of course, this is easier at a startup than a large company, but it makes it very valuable. Inclusivity increases the diversity of perspectives and expands the number of unique observations about our system. Don't be afraid to widen the team and invite more participants. Everyone has a role to play when it comes with observing system behavior and identifying trends. And some of Gremlin's team members have participated in successful game day events with hundreds of participants. At a minimum, though, engineers who own and or maintain the service should be involved because they know how it works better than anyone else. Game days, once taking at least 4 hours, now take 30 minutes to 2 hours, depending on how much you're testing. Here's where the new service really gets good. Before you had to organize your tools externally, we've now streamlined the system to make it quicker and easier to get to the good stuff, finding fault, or even better, not finding fault. You can now link dashboards and runbooks directly in Gremlin, keeping everything organized and for other members to easily review your findings. We've already suggested goals and recommended scenarios if you're new to chaos engineering and you need some more guidance. Or of course, you can select your own. After your attacks are run, you can capture your learnings inside Gremlin, attach screenshots from game days, and create and track Jira tickets with our end-to-end integration. You can easily rerun the same game day and follow up has become so much easier. There's no getting lost in the shuffle with tickets with our new Jira integration. There's no wondering how did the last person record this information because it's all hosted within the app itself. This dramatically reduces prep and execution time. So you can easily schedule and execute game days, which means you can run more game days and increase your reliability. It's easier to know what and how to test through suggested goals and scenarios, and you can learn what tests are possible and essential for your company's needs. You can confidently execute tests and document and record the results, and then use previous game days to easily plan the next game day or test it better. And best of all, you can easily share these findings with the company stakeholders, showing exactly what you're doing, where the value in this product lies, and where you yourself are creating differences in your company. Now that you've learned all about the fundamentals of game day, Andre will walk you through our game day service. Take it away, Andre.
Thanks, Sydney. Hey everyone, my name's Andre, and today I'll be walking you through the game day feature in Gremlin. When walking through a feature like this, I feel like it's always best to have an example to frame each step. So imagine we're part of an engineering team working to set up multi-region redundancy at our company. Our company provides a critical SaaS service in really demanding industries like healthcare and government, so reliability is super important. We need to know for a fact that we can withstand a regional failure with as little downtime as possible. And so, we're going to use Gremlin to make sure that our failover process works the way we expect it to. Now, to do this, we decided to run a game day. And now that Gremlin natively supports game days, we'll walk through setting up and running the game day in the web app. So, when you first log into Gremlin, you'll see the dashboard as usual, but you'll now see this new Game Days icon on the left-hand side of the screen. If you click on it, it'll bring you to the Game Day screen. You can see any game days that your team has already created listed here. You'll also be able to see the number of game days the number of game days that your team has ran in the past month, as well as the total number of game days. And you'll also be able to see how the number of game days that you've ran has compared to previous months. So you'll be able to get a sense of how many you're running and how often you're running them. But to show this feature off, I'm going to create a new game day by clicking on New Game Day. First, we're going to pick a name that describes what this game is going to test. And since we're testing multi-region redundancy, let's keep this simple and just call this validate multi-region, oops, if I can type, redundancy. So next, we'll specify what type of game day this is. This is meant to help clarify the purpose of the game day and how we should be treating it. Now, as you can see, when I click on type, Gremlin includes a number of built-in types with a description of what each one represents. But for this example, since we're testing a new behavior of our systems, I'm going to click Exploratory. And you'll notice that Gremlin automatically fills out this goal field, which is essentially the goal that we expect this game day to help us achieve or help us demonstrate. Now, you can, of course, edit this however you want to. I actually wrote up a goal that I'm going to copy and paste into here, or rather that I'm going to type into here. I'll just say that our primary region automatically fails over to our secondary region when unavailable. And that's just to help explain to the entire team and to anybody else who looks at this game day, like any key stakeholders, like managers, for example. This represents what it is that we're trying to either prove or disprove, essentially our hypothesis for this game day and what it is that we're trying to test. So with that, we'll head on to the next field, which are these scenarios. Now, scenarios, if you've been using Gremlin, are essentially a way of running multiple attacks in succession, as well as being able to include like status checks so that as you're running attacks and testing your systems, the status checks can automatically monitor your systems. And if there's an unexpected problem, like an unexpected failure, or they take a long time to respond, the status check will fire and it will automatically halt the scenario. For the sake of this webinar, we're just going to run one scenario, which I've already created. And I believe, there we go. Call this one region failure. I'll select that and you see it gets added to the scenario list. So for environment, This is just to specify which environment that this game day is going to be running in. By default, or rather it defaults to production, but if you're not quite ready to run in production, you can enter staging or a test or a development or a QA or whatever you name your environments to run them in. Since we're testing this in production, I'm going to call this production. And then next, you can link to any dashboards or runbooks that are relevant to this game day. And we really encourage doing this because when you run a game day, you want to have everything in one centralized place. Let's say, for example, you have an issue with your systems that you didn't expect and you need to recover or troubleshoot. Adding a runbook link ensures that the folks running this game day, the stakeholders, the engineers, have really quick, easy, accessible, one-click access to the runbooks that the systems that you're testing use. So this way, it's really easy to just go into here and click on those to get access to those. Same thing for dashboards, right? When we're running these scenarios, we want to watch our systems, watch our monitors and metrics to see how those systems are responding. And instead of us having to go to our internal company wiki or dig through Slack or whatever it is to find links to these dashboards, we can just copy and paste them here so they're really easy to access. So I'm going to copy those links right now. These are just examples, of course, but this will give you just an idea of how you should be approaching this. It will double check to make sure that the URL is formatted properly. So I'll just add those in. And if you have multiple links that you want to add, you can just use these plus and minus buttons to add or remove additional links as necessary. So next, we want to assign the roles of the people who are going to be participating in this game day and including them as part of this game day. Each of these roles are roles that Gremlin came up with to explain essentially what each person in the game day is responsible for. There are 4 that we recommend. Owner is essentially the game day's ringleader. They decide on the game day plan, the schedule, and when to start and stop any scenarios within the game day. The coordinator is the person who prepares the game day in Gremlin, kind of like what I'm doing right now. They'll also coordinate other teammates and actually run the scenarios within the web application. The observer is responsible for monitoring the dashboards throughout the game day and reporting any key observations or issues to the rest of the team. So for example, if the scenario that we're running triggers an alert to fire, the observer would be the person to notice that and just notify the rest of the team that, hey, this alert that we had set up fired as a result of this scenario. And last but not least, the reporter records any notes, observations, action items, and results into the Gremlin web app once the entire game day is done and the team has had a chance to discuss the outcomes and the impact. And you can have multiple observers, and you can do so by clicking the plus button. So if you have, let's say, 6 or 7 people who are in on this game day, you can press this button as many times as you want and assign them by clicking the participant dropdown. And the participant list pulls each person who is a member of your Gremlin team. So for example, as the owner, I can assign myself. For the coordinator, I'll add my coworker, Sydney. For the observer, we'll add Rich. And then for the reporter, we'll add Frank. And this just makes it really easy to find and add other Gremlin users to this game day. All right, so now that we've got our game day set up and our team picked out and our scenarios picked out, we'll click save. And this will save and create this new game day and immediately bring you to the game day's detail screen. So here, of course, you can see all the settings that we just entered. You've got your links to your dashboards and your runbooks. We've got our participants list here, and we've got our list of scenarios here. We'll also be able to see when the scenario was last ran as part of this game day. And if you click on the white space here, you'll be able to see a preview of each of the steps that are going to run as part of this scenario. And if you want to, you can also click on the name. This will bring you to the actual scenario screen, where you'll be able to edit your scenario. I'll actually just do that real quick to show you. You can come in here and edit your status checks, your attacks, and so on and so forth. But we'll actually go back to our game day screen because we don't want to make any changes there just yet. All right, so with our game day set up, let's actually run through it. And the way this works is when you have your team together in one place, let's say you're all in the same Zoom call or in the same room if you're back in office, you would go through each of the scenarios in this list and click this run scenario button to get it started. You and your team would keep an eye on your dashboards, on your systems, see how they're responding, especially regarding your goal and your hypothesis about how the systems will respond the way you think they will. And then once the scenario is done running, we'll enter our notes, we'll enter any, let's say, screen captures of our metrics, and then create any action items coming out of anything that we notice. But first we want to see how the scenario runs and if it is able to complete successfully. So we're going to click run scenario to get that started. And if you've ran a scenario before, this works exactly the same way. You'll be able to see each step in the scenario run as it's running. You'll be able to keep track of what exactly it is the Gremlin agent is doing and what step it's on. You can click into the status check to see what the most recent response was and if it was valid or invalid. Works exactly the same as running a scenario normally does. And of course, down at the bottom, we have the ability to enter any details, any summary of the scenario once it's done running. But what we've recently added too is the ability to not only add attachments, but also link to Jira. So if you find any issues as a result of the scenario run, we can add them here. And we'll see an example of that later. But for now, let's just wait for this scenario to finish running and see what happens. Hopefully, like we filled out in our goal, running a black hole attack on our primary region will cause our systems to automatically fail over to our secondary region. And there should be minimal, if any, downtime apparent on our website or on this service rather. So we'll give that a little bit just to run through and see what we get back. All right, so our scenario's finished running, and as we noticed, it didn't quite go as planned, right? The scenario's halted and is indicating a failure. And specifically, it's our status check that's reporting a failure. So let's click into this and see what happened. So pretty apparent what happened. We set our request timeout to 500 milliseconds, and the response that we got took 517. So because our service, our URL, took longer to respond than we expected it to, or than what we were able to tolerate, Gremlin interpreted that as a failure, and as a result, the status check automatically halted the scenario. So what this tells us is that our systems didn't fail over as fast as we wanted them to. Right? Even though we ran the black hole attack, we still weren't able to get the response times that we needed in order to mark this as a success. So it might have taken a bit longer than we expected for our systems to fail over, or there was a bit of latency, as our load balancer was redirecting traffic. Whatever it might be, it's not up to what we set as our standard. So we're going to mark this as a failure. So under the detail screen here, we're able to, under the results screen, we're able to describe what exactly failed and why or why not our systems passed. So because our status check failed, Gremlin automatically selected no, they did not perform as expected. Yes, we did uncover a potential incident. No, we did not mitigate an incident. And then for our notes, we'll just add something that pretty succinctly describes what the problem was. For example, automatic failover process took longer than expected. Need to reduce the failover time. And then for the attachments, I'm actually going to click Add Image and grab a screenshot that I took earlier into my pictures, API metrics overview, and that'll automatically upload and attach the screenshot to this scenario run. In this case, it's a screenshot that our observer took of our dashboard, just showing what happened during, or rather, while the scenario was running. And so this way we have this to be able to go back and reference later. And now I'm also going to create a Jira ticket. Because this is linked to our own internal Jira instance, I'm actually going to move the screen away just for a second. I'm going to click Create Issue, and I'm going to select the team that I'm working with. And what that'll do is that'll actually read through our Jira instance and automatically populate these fields with what it thinks are relevant to that specific project. So we can choose our project, we can choose our issue type, we can choose an assignee. In this case, it defaulted to me because it was able to find me within Jira. And then also added essentially a template for the description that includes the name of the scenario where the failure occurred, a link to the scenario one within the Gremlin web app. So within Jira, I can just immediately jump back here to Gremlin, the run date and time, and then the description of the scenario, what it was trying to test, and what our results were. So I'll just enter a quick summary explaining what this is. I'll just let folks in Jira know this is a test, and then give it a descriptive name like failure of automatic failover process. I'll click Create Issue, and then I'll create this new ticket within Jira and automatically link it back here. So I can jump back and forth with no issues, and other folks in my Jira team are able to track this as well. So now that this is filled out, I'll click Save to save this scenario run. And now whenever you come back here into this game day and come to the Runs tab and click on this scenario, we're able to see exactly what happened the last time we ran it, exactly how it failed, and refer back to our notes and our previous ticket. And so typically during a game day, we would repeat this process for each other scenario. We come back here to configuration, we'd go down to the next one, click run, observe it, add in our notes and any screenshots and any action items as tickets. And because this is a webinar and we are time limited, I'll just save it to this one scenario run, but this should give you just a good idea of what the process looks like overall. And so now after we ran each scenario, the last thing we want to do before wrapping up is to review outcomes, write down any final thoughts, and confirm our action items. And to do this, we'll click on the Summary tab at the top here. And the Summary tab shows all of the scenario runs and results, notes, action items in one place. Now, while scenario results are linked to a specific scenario run, the items in the Summary tab are linked to the game day itself. So we can always come back and check these notes by clicking on this Summary tab. And these notes are the same regardless of how often we run this game day or how many times. Now, one important note is that any Jira issues that we created during this game day will also appear here as well. So that is an exception, and that's just to help show you all of the items that are the result of this particular game day. So here, I'll just fill in some additional notes about the game day. Let's just say our backup, or rather our load balancer took too long to fail over to the secondary region. For action items, we'll just say check load balancer routing rules, and then rerun game day to verify new routing rules and timing. And I recommend personally, instead of using this actions field to track things like work items, create Jira issues instead, and just use the action items to describe the overall or high level actions that the team needs to take away from this game day. But in either case, once you've got everything you need, click save, and then this will save and persist this information with the game day itself. So now next time you come back into Gremlin and you come into Game Days and you find the game day that you worked on previously, everything is as we just saw it. We're able to see the summary of our last scenario run, we're able to click through individual runs here and see the outcomes. And in the summary tab, we're able to see the notes and the action items that we took last time, as well as see the status of any tickets that are linked to this game day. This brings us to the end of our demo and to the end of our webinar. Our hope is that this helps you learn how you and your team can start creating and running game days in Gremlin, as well as how you might migrate your existing game days into Gremlin. If you want to learn more, we have other resources available at gremlin.com/gameday, including a tutorial and history of game days. And as always, you can reach out to our team through the Gremlin web app or by going to gremlin.com/contact if you have any more questions. Thanks again for joining us, and have a great day.